Payments Leader Show, and I'm your host today, Adrian Evans, and absolutely delighted to welcome Tamara Gillian on the show. Tamara, welcome.
Hello, lovely to be here.
Now, just to introduce Tamara, there's many things she is, but I think serial entrepreneur, I think change agent for me, without a shadow of a doubt, and somebody whose personal mantra is alone difference divide us, but together we can simplify us. And I just think we're going to come on and talk about her vision and her mission. So having successfully worked and operated Cherry London, which was a marketing agency, Tamara has a new vision. And that new vision is to harness the power of collaboration in a new and exciting way that would empower women throughout the world. You could tell her, obviously, marketing background, because the title is Wealthiher Network. And obviously, in our community, we're about giving underrepresented voices and all boats rising. So thrilled today for the conversations we're going to have. So I'm wondering, because you've got a fascinating backstory as well, but I wonder if you could tell us where you've come from and how you got where you are to do what you do today.
Absolutely, I love that phrase, all boats rising, and how I'm all boats rising, but particularly female boats, I have to admit.
Okay.
But I have two stories. I have two stories that led me to where I am today, and what I do, and how I came to be doing this somewhat adventurous mission, this bold mission. My father came from the East End of London. He left school at 14. His father was a bare knuckle fighter after the war to pay for his family. So he was sort of believed that if you worked hard, if you grafted, if you fought for your place, you could make things happen. And he was actually a really ambitious entrepreneur. And he started with nothing. He went into the film industry. He was a lighting man, and then he became a property developer. And actually, ultimately, he went to New Zealand with my mother, because the other side of my story is my mother comes from a family of 8. She's got 6 sisters, sort of the female gene. I had an amazing grandmother, the matriarch, who was a journalist, and so I was always going to do something in female empowerment. And the two sides of my story collided into what I've ended up doing in life. My father's entrepreneurial side, with a lot of fight and a lot of self-belief, and my mother's female empowerment storytelling sort of side of her family. And so we were really lucky. I left London when I was 12, went to New Zealand. My parents went into wine and went into hotels, where I worked in those businesses from a young age. And so I came to London at 24, and I was always going to start my first business at 30. I had a plan. I had a book, which was Faith Popcorn, Marketing to Women. I was going to start my first agency, Marketing to Women, at 30. I did that. And so those two sides really sort of made that path just what I was meant to do. And as you said, I did Cherry London, and I loved Cherry London, an amazing 11 years, did some fabulous things with amazing brands from O2 to Visa, and just actually thought, I want to do something for women. I want to use all this network and partnership experience, and I want to do something to advance women. And that's where Wealthiher was born.
Brilliant. Now, amazing story. I love how that colliding in both sides of your organization, of your. But I think again, it's doing something with that. That's we can all have those things, but so tell us more then about, you have a purpose. Bring that purpose and vision to life for us.
So Wealthiher's purpose, and it's very centric to my personal purpose, is how do we advance women? How do we empower women with education, with providing them networks and providing them opportunities? That is very centric to women's financial empowerment, but it takes a really multidimensional view. So whether that's, how do you talk to loved ones, whether that's children or in a relationship, about financial matters, it's really complicated. It's sort of cultural, it's emotional, it is functional. How do you start to negotiate for your salary, to get the salary you deserve? How do you actually have those negotiation skills, through to how do you raise money as an entrepreneur? How do you get funding? And then that point, or about actually how do we make stuff happen? Because I hate words. I much prefer action. So we run accelerators for female entrepreneurs. We run leadership exchanges. So to create networks. So those things are really, really true to me. And that purpose, we became a company in January 2020, great time to start a company, a new venture that had purpose and mission at its heart. But here we are, still standing. And that really, I saw in the research that we did as Wealthiher in terms of the shifting intent of people and particularly women, that in fact it changed people and that purpose became a lot more important. And I definitely found that purpose is sort of, I don't think I could go to work every day and not have a really central mission and purpose, because it changed me as it changed so many people. And achieving things for good and for business, I think, will always be part of everything I want to do for now and evermore.
Excellent. I wonder if there's two areas there I think would be really interesting to talk about, both negotiation there for women as well, and also then purpose. I wonder if we could start with purpose, because you mentioned there that you can't imagine working without a clear purpose. Now, what advice have you got for somebody to have or find or discover their purpose? Because I see many people who sort of hear that as an ambition and go, I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big question, and it's a big challenge. I think understanding what really matters to you personally, what drives you, what your values are, what you really care about is a good starting point.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
what you are, what the practicalities of what you're prepared to do or what's possible. Because, I've taken on a very big purpose, made it my everything. But in fact, you can have purpose by taking on something in the existing role
yeah.
that you're in, or doing something on the side to realize that purpose, or taking part in something in a different way. I've seen a lot of people in our network and our members work differently, start to work differently to enable them to, do something and do something else with a little bit more purpose inherent in it. But I think that starting point of what really matters to me, and actually also what are my strengths that I can put to good use, I think is also a good question within that.
Yeah. Wonderful advice. And I think taking the time out, obviously the work we do with a lot of people is about let's connect with the real you first, in terms of what actually matters to you. And just one piece for me, I think it's important as well, is actually acknowledging that what you matters to you does matter. Yep. As opposed to, don't be dismissive of that, because we do a lot of work in impactful negotiation for women. And I find there's lots of tools, there's lots of techniques, etc. But actually getting women to connect and go, this is me. I'm okay to show up as me. Any advice there about for women just looking that journey? Because I'm sure it's been a journey of discovery for you.
Yeah, I think that the show up as me is, I've been on a journey through my own career of, showing emotion. Ironically, now everyone's saying everyone needs to be more of a human centric or emotional leader. But actually, when I was growing up, I'm quite emotional. I'm quite passionate. I care. And I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
crying in one of my earlier jobs when I was getting negative feedback, which was actually, I now know, a gift. But was actually, I'm thinking, actually, no, I shouldn't be, feel bad, because in fact, I care and I passionately care, which is what this
yeah, yeah.
response is about. But then I worked in an all male consultancy business. So in fact, I sort of dampened that down. And now I've almost, re-embraced again that kind of as a leader, I became, much more, you don't show emotion, you certainly don't show your weakness, you certainly don't show your vulnerability. But again, I think the pandemic changed leadership, and people, I've heard all sorts of leaders, I've interviewed, talk to me about they cried when they, telling their teams they were going to let them go. They've shared the numbers of where the business really was. And in fact, it's created a whole new relationship. So I do think that sort of journey is to, truth. God, I hate that word in many ways, but being honest about who you are,
Yeah.
where you are, and the world has changed and it keeps changing. And I think that that is something that is an opportunity for both men and women. And then the other side is the thing of step into your power. I've also realized I've become more influential. And actually that's something I've always been, as a woman, culturally, you don't want to seem, that we underplay when we introduce ourselves in meetings. We don't talk ourselves up as this amazing person. And I used to laugh because I had a coach come in and talk to my team, and we went around the room and everyone introduced themselves. And actually more women than men introduced themselves in a less sort of amazing way. It was almost very
Definitely.
downplayed. So I think owning your strengths, your success. And that's something I
Yeah.
really struggled with. It took me a lot of coaching to say, I think I've done okay. I've worked hard. We need to own
Yeah.
it a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. I can only relate to that so often with some of the challenges that we face in those situations. Just out of interest, then, just moving on from that, in, is that time of year where obviously a lot of people have negotiated or they're going through a negotiation, and it's fascinating for me is like over the last few years, it's like there's been lots and lots of demand for really, really good skills, and people still had um, not huge increases. And then now we flipped over the other side, and there definitely won't be large increases. And people are, our big mission is about people being appropriately rewarded for the value they add. What advice have you got to women to perhaps start and improve their negotiation ability or their negotiation position?
Yeah, it was very interesting. So I went on a negotiation training course many years ago, and I have done it with my team over the years. And this amazing woman, she's written several books, Nicole Soames, and she did this exercise. And the exercise was, okay, you're going to work in pairs, you're going to sell a house, and you're going to sell the house. And here's the faults about the house, here's the pros. Now work out your price and go and negotiate with your partner. And what women did more often than men was to say, oh, there's a tree that blocks the light and there's a road that's going to be built. Therefore, I'll negotiate against myself before I
Oh yeah,
even walk in the room. Before I even go in, I'll say, I'd like this, but I think it's fair that I'll ask for this. And the biggest advice that I remember, and it rings true to me, is go high, high. Let the other side negotiate against you. Why would you negotiate against
yeah,
yourself?
defeating, yeah,
Don't, and there's all this talk for men and women, but more women than men, imposter syndrome. We are more likely to say, oh, just negotiate against myself and go for less. Don't let them do that. I say be armed with information, because, if you know what you have done, what you have delivered, what the market value is, then you are in a stronger negotiating position. And also know what your fallbacks are, because if they can't give it to you now because of the economic state of the company, say, well, okay, well, what do I have to do in 6 or 3 months? I'd like to
yeah,
review this, because it sets out a framework, and for you to again outline how you've performed against that and within a time frame. And then the final piece, and I still say this, it is as much who knows you will decide your promotional route of advancement in a company, or it is just a fact. And I think that for women, we've become less visible in a world where we're working from home more. Women are choosing to work from home slightly more, whether from a parental responsibilities. And if you're not seen in the same way, or you're not developing relationships in the same way, because we're hopping on teams and it's straight to business, think of the ways that you can be known and seen, because it matters.
yeah. Brilliant advice. Love that. Love that. Particularly the visibility one. It's
Mm.
visibility matters. We had another guest on recently who shared a great formula that too many people get caught in their ability. But he said, there's something much more important than that. There's visibility, affability, and then ability. And I think that's really strong and a great structure there.
I
So I wonder
love
if we
that.
could,
It's really good. It's really good. Those the
yeah,
three
I
the
think it's
three.
very, yeah, it's very powerful, and it's easy to get, because I think so many people can get, particularly women as well, is like, I find is they lead with competence. They lead with competence, yeah.
Mm,
And but that means you stay down here and only what you can do today, yeah. Which doesn't mean we can move to growth, etc. And visibility clearly matters. And putting out
mm.
your brand into the world, that especially when you're on a mission, I believe this is possible. We've got to breathe that stuff to life. No two
Yeah.
ways about it. And you're a living example of that. So, tell us more about the Wealthiher mission. What's the mission if we were to step out even 18 months from now, or even sort of 4 to 5 years now? What is the mission that you're working towards?
I want to educate more women to be financially confident, so that and I know that education is the key to that. And education can come in, for women, it's multidimensional. So, as I said, if you just talk the practicalities, that doesn't overcome some of the cultural. So, you need both the practical expert advice, but you need, you know, people that help you overcome some of the emotional barriers. So I want to educate more women to be confident, to
Yeah,
financially engage, to ask for that pay rise, to ask for that funding. I want to connect more women, so to each other, to do business with each other.
Yeah.
And I want to have more women going on our funding and accelerator programs, because for me, my mission is about tangible outcomes. So making those things happen, and making it happen to an increasing impact, is really important. And the other side of that coin is working in partnership, because we, the more amazing companies we have on the journey, whether that's HSBC, who's been with us since we started, Mishcon de Rare, KPMG,
Yeah.
they are huge. They have expertise, they have influence, they have impact, and that makes it possible for me to do more of what we do. But in turn, it's collaboration. I am there to help them to prosper and grow. And in the current climate, that's really important. And I believe that good and business go hand in hand, and businesses of the future need to do both. And so that's why that partnership model success and growth is so important.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the leverage from those true leverage from those partnerships is huge. So I've got a question for you here, because this is something really close to me as well. Is I would consider myself, and by the way, I've been called a male ally, because I believe all boats can rise. So I represent all underrepresented groups, and obviously the largest single one is women. What advice do you have for two? So it's a double-edged question. So what advice do you have for male allies to support women? And what advice do you have of women of welcoming male allies who want to help educate you, open up opportunities, etc.? What advice do you have? Because it's a really important question for me.
Yeah, I think you absolutely are a male ally, and I've absolutely heard that time and time again from the people that have spoken about you. So absolutely, I think I'll start with a male ally and thinking about what we need to do to involve men positively in the conversation. I think actually I am planning at the moment with Dr. Michelle King, who was head of strategy for UN Women. I'm actually meeting today the executive director of UN Women, but I'm planning an event for male allies for International Women's Day, because I think I don't want to talk with Dr. Michelle King. She's amazing. I don't want to talk any more about women. What more are we going to do together to advance, and
Yeah,
divide? Actually, if we don't do this collaboratively, collectively with men, we are not going to achieve what we want, and we are not going to achieve it in a way that benefits men, and we're not going to achieve it in a way that benefits women. So I think that conversation is the one that we should be having. So I love that you've asked that. I think that it is. I have a very good friend who is founded a company called Token Man, and he came to speak to actually our
yes,
male allies.
yeah,
Yeah, in the network. And one of the things he said is, he talked about the only time he's cried was when his brother died, and to his wife. And he said, why is it that I am not able to cry? And he said, so I just want to give you that illustration, because actually it's really hard to be an emotive, human-centric leader. We've got generations of how you are meant to be, the cultures and the way that you're meant to behave in those. So to me, to show vulnerability, it's really hard. And in fact, when you walk into a room of difference, no matter who you are in that difference, you've got things to overcome, and you don't feel like you
definitely.
belong. So I think he said, women, dear women, please reach out a hand and understand we are trying, but we don't always know
Yeah,
how.
yeah,
And it is not easy. And I think that for me really was a strong point that sort of stuck with me. And the other side of that is, I think that I don't think DI&E is working, and the research certainly says it's not. You have, women saying, actually, I feel like things have got worse. Some of that's about the ways
yeah,
that we're working, and you have men thinking it's gone too far. And in fact, I'm
yeah,
now
yeah,
biased against. So we have to find a different way, but I think it starts with truly understanding both sides of the coin and what needs to be done. And then I think it has to be tangible things and tangible conscious things. And Dr. Michelle King gave this example of someone, she was going to do a talk, couldn't do it, so she gave it to her number two, who she totally, rates. And someone said, well, I don't think that they're the right person for the job. It's not you. I'm not sure. And she said, actually, the thing I had to tangibly do was to say, what is it that you don't think they're good at?
yeah,
Why do you
yeah,
don't think they can represent you or me? Have you actually seen them speak? Or what was
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah.
Because when you actually you're not calling someone out, you're just trying to understand. But in fact, sometimes when you dig beneath that, people say, no, I haven't actually, and I'm just nervous because
Yeah,
you're amazing and this is an unknown quantity, and I don't know them, and maybe there's some bias. But you've got to stand and point those things out
yeah,
with generosity and subtlety and and
yeah.
understanding.
And isn't that's so true as well, though? But again, something really simple comes there to me is like we all needed to start somewhere. And if you ever look at any public speaker, it's a very good example. I think public speaking is one of those things that is ultimately the ultimate visual, um, visibility. Is nobody started life as a really good speaker. Fact, nobody. Anybody who's now really polished at that, even for the very best in the world, like Barack Obama, it takes time, it takes effort and involvement. Calling that out is really interesting. And I like what you said there as well. I think one of the messages about bringing this together, it to me seems about saying, well, I say this to firms all the time. Without diverse and inclusive teams, you are losing money. Hit them where it hurts. Why are you losing money? Because other competitors of yours who understand that particular unbanked or underbanked area or whatever, they're now building a relationship with those customers who will buy products and services from them. Yep. And so, but bringing that together, but no, thank you, because that was a really important thing for me to understand how to be a better sort of male ally as well.
But I so agree. I'm actually, that's always been my one of my sort of levers that I've used with Wealthiher. I am doing good. I am advancing women, but in fact, I'm advancing your business because it's not hidden where it is hidden. Hit them where it hurts and hit them where the opportunity lost is. And I think that's so important. Like this doesn't make sense commercially not to get this right. You will,
Absolutely.
you will not grow. You will not realize your ambitions. And you've got, I was just looking at an accelerator for the luxury category and just looking at the loss of artisans who are younger. You don't have any diversity in sort of craft artisans, and yet they are the future of your workforce that's going to create possibilities. If you go back to the 1800s, the innovation in some of those categories were from people in their 20s. You're losing that diversity. So unless you fix that, so there is also some fundamental not getting this right is going to
Yeah, yeah.
endanger some skills that make those industries possible.
Oh, I think there's so many angles there where they're
Mm,
losing out. But again, going back to this, I suppose that's why one of the reasons I love the payments industry is because usually, I'm all about creating four wins. Yep.
mm,
So if you can create four wins, well, everybody can rise. Yep.
mm.
And it's where one of those wins has to be just isolated. So moving just from that perspective, obviously you've been in a number of leadership roles and now on a new mission there. What are some of the lessons that you've learned from others, but also in the day to day, actually making tough choices, difficult decisions, and trying to connect with people from a human centric way? Tell us about your experience of leadership.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll start with just one that immediately comes to mind, and it's I think that leadership does require you to have an influence. It does require you to have a voice. It does require you to champion and ask questions for your team or for your company. And one of the great lessons I learned was from Dame Stephanie Shirley. And one of the things that I identified for Wealthiher is that we were going to do a form of crowdfunding. We were going to go to influential women and say, 2% of funding goes for female founders. Why don't you add your voice, but invest and benefit as we benefit? So I went out to a great pool of women and I have some amazing investors that joined us. But I went to Dame Stephanie Shirley, who I knew. She was one of the youngest, she IPO'd her company in the 60s. She ran a tech company. She was like the tech pioneer. And then she said, no, it's not for me. And then I wrote to her and I said, look, I hope I didn't offend you by breaking the sort of almost this grounds of collaboration where you've spoken and supported our mission. And she said, no, always ask the question. And sometimes it might mean not today. It doesn't mean no always. And so she said, always ask the question. And if it's a no, it doesn't mean it's a no always. It means it's a no for today. And I thought that is such brilliant advice. And it's something that I think for female leaders, it's something that we're not always as punchy on ask the question or ask for the ground or ask for something or the funding or the, for our team. Another one, I touched upon it before, was actually Tamara Lohan, the founder of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And
Yeah,
they, funding for female entrepreneurs is, what I do, but, and I know the figures. And they did one of the biggest ever crowdfunding rounds just pre-pandemic for Mr. and Mrs. Smith, from their members, from their customers. And then obviously the pandemic happened, and she talked about sitting on the phone, and all of that money just went to supporting hotels, refunding clients, but she still needed to make some super tough decisions with regards to her team, and crying on the calls and being honest about where the business was. And she said it unleashed this new possibility of honesty, openness, but also transparency about where the business really was and what needed to be done. And again, there is this myth that we hide things from people we don't think they can handle. You can't handle the truth. But actually, she, I thought it was a really valuable lesson. And she obviously went on then, they've just sold. She went a step from CTO to CEO. And I just think she's an amazing leader. But that lesson was something I thought was really powerful.
Wonderful. Yeah, deadly combination. I love the way you've done that. From almost a sort of hard realization of asking, but at the same time, a vulnerability as well to share the truth. So then moving to challenges as well as opportunity, because obviously growing a new brand, a new community, a new tribe. What if you could sort of share some of the challenges, but also then the opportunities you see? I think this would be a wonderful chance for you to express how this vision is going to come together.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't think none of us were prepared for what happened. And I started a business in January 2020. I was due to close the London Stock Exchange in March 2020 as a big sort of thing. We had to cancel 100 people. I was actually just back there last week for the first time with the CEO, Julia Hoggett, talking about female-powered IPOs. And I felt finally, we've made it back. But so, that I think resilience, and having resilience, and no leader that has led through the last few years does not have that. And I think I know from research that women are more likely to be burning out than men, about 15%. And so I think keeping yourself strong, well, recharging, because I know I had a lot of ways that I coped with pressure and balance, and I threw all those out the window and just said, I'm just going to work all the time, all hours, any time of the day. I ended up running my business from New Zealand for that first 6 months or first 8 months, because my mother got COVID in March 2020. So I flew there and I ran it in the night till 2 a.m. And so I just sort of think, and now, 4 years later, we're all a bit, we're coming out the other side. We've had the cost of living, we've had inflation. So I think for business leaders, staying the course, looking after yourself, putting in some of those healthy practices, and going back to you and what you need, whether it's physical, emotional nurture. You and I laughed this morning because I was like, oh, I've just done kickboxing this morning. And my New Year's resolution is to go back to the tools that kept me strong and resilient and enabled me to sort of weather the stress. So I think that's a challenge. It's a challenge I faced. I think adapting, taking a business through a pandemic and change, we were so grateful to stay with our partners. We were like, thank you for sticking with us in 21, 22. We kept some because they just cared about the mission. We lost others because they were like, commercially, it doesn't make sense. The cost of living has had another dent. But also holding the line on your value in those conversations, because we got into a habit of, what do you want? What else can I give you? And in fact, that doesn't always make you as commercially viable as you should be. And so holding the line on your value, even in tough economic conditions, is really important. And I met up with Viv, amazing CEO from Albright. And I heard her talking about where she'd been looking at the bottom line and where they make money, where they don't. And I really thought, again, there's some lessons to be learned, and where you can do cost savings, not hold your value, but also watch the bottom line. And in tough times, they're really important lessons, and something I haven't always, I'm all about the mission. I'm all about the big ideas. And that hasn't been something as a leader I've always leaned into. And I think we need to. And I think to your question on opportunity, I think I talked to an entrepreneur the other day and she said, I don't mind tough times. And I was like, really? Especially taking into account those two
Yeah,
factors I just spoke about. She said, because the great rise, if you look at times of economic uncertainty, you that is where you've had great innovation, that's where you've had great progress. And so I think
absolutely.
there is opportunity as things change. There's opportunity and growth in new areas as people look for new solutions. And then the only other side of that, unfortunately, going back to your all boats rising, we also know that fixing some of the funding challenges is really important, because those businesses that are innovating, seeking new solutions, need growth funding to do that. Women, less than 2% of funding goes to women, less than 0.02% funding goes if you're a diverse female
Yeah.
founder. So in fact, that's all very well for me to say opportunity, but we need to continue to change the ecosystem to make sure those businesses are funded to realize their potential. And I also think particularly in spaces like payments and fintech, I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, I think, sorry, that's just a whistle stop tour in many ways of actually the challenges that have happened. And as a business owner, I can definitely relate to those. And can I just probe a little bit further there as well about the resilience? What does resilience mean to you? And you mentioned some of the tools there that you use. Just if you could share that from a personal perspective, what keeps you fit and well?
Yeah, I think I have learned I need to, my number one is that emotional support. And, my dad, the entrepreneur, said, what you do is you are the innovator, you're the inspirer, you're the person that
Yeah,
pushes through the barriers. You need energy to do that. So what is it that gives you
absolutely.
energy within that?
Yeah,
One of the big, I started saying I'm a big emotional player. It's a massive driver for me, but time with my son and time with people I care about, or
of course.
people that are just energizing in terms of ideas, is really important to me. And that's a big tool for me, and making sure that when, it sounds awful, there'll be parents listening going, what, you only ever do every other Friday? Because my ex-husband picks up my son on that Friday, but every other Friday, that is, I am like, no meeting. I don't even care how important the person is. I am there to get my son. I am there to take him home. And we always do wonderful things. We invest in that time, and I'm really there when I'm there. I have breakfast with him most mornings. And unless, again, it's something really important, again, that's just my time to catch up with him and say, what's, how's your day? What's going on? What
Usually,
have you got planned? And I don't always do the evenings, because things tend, we do a lot in the evenings or those early afternoons. So, and he's in a million activities. So investing that time. Today, as I said, I'm going to meet the amazing former Under Secretary General of the UN, Pumzule. Someone said to me, she's in town, she's talking about her foundation. And I did think, I don't have the time. And then I thought, no, invest, because it will be full of ideas, possibilities, and what an amazing icon to meet and have the chance to meet. So I've cleared everything. I think I did touch on it already, looking after yourself physically cannot be, underestimated. Sleep, fitness, just, breathing, going for a walk. And I have to force myself. I
yeah,
love
yeah.
to work, and actually, forcing myself to take breaks or go outside for 15 minutes. But I think it is key. And for me, I've talked about it, it's exercise. And then I think the final piece is just getting the right advice and being open and honest
Yeah,
enough to share where you really
absolutely.
are.
Two-way place. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Now I can so relate to that as somebody as well who is the energizer, who is the innovator, etc. Really wise from your dad there about where does that energy come from, and how do we renew it? Because if we don't renew, it just goes down and down. So wonderful advice there. And I suppose the other thing as well, knowing whom you are and what your needs are and acknowledging those, I think that's a really important piece, particularly women. A lot of women miss that as well. So so
Yeah. And it's funny. I used to have some pattern, going back to that point of all the patterns that we had. I used to have some. I know how I work. I will work incredibly crazily to a big outcome, whether it's a launch or an event. And then I used to give myself a recharge moment. I've stopped doing that because there's so many of them. And so that's what I mean when I think I've had to take a good hard look and go,
Yeah,
how do I
yeah, yeah,
get those recharge moments in when
absolutely.
I'm so busy with my son or my, all of those and my business? It's, you've still, and I think women, to your point, we care for other people before we care for ourselves, but we've got to put the oxygen mask on ourselves first.
Yeah, and every flight, I always it always looks sort of, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. But they do tell you, even with your children, put your own on because you're stronger to then help them. It's every flight I sit down, I smile every time when that happens. But it's true, and that's why it's a cliche, as I say. So going back to that younger question, I wonder if we could, which is, looking back when you were younger, sort of early 20s, if you were giving Tamara that advice now, what would you say to her?
I think I would say, I always steal the words of other people, but Anya Highmarch said it to me, and she said, "You are better than you think you are."
Hmm.
And you are, and at different stages of your career, tell yourself that you are better than you think you are, because we're our harshest critics. And
Yep.
sometimes, we don't have that experience, and you haven't been there before. Those feelings are more. And actually, I think there's a dichotomy, because I definitely knew in my younger self, before life had happened and I'd had
Yeah.
some knocks, I was probably more confident. And then there reaches that point where you're like, oh no, I'm in this big world and it's hard and
Yeah.
I've achieved an education. So actually, but I'm not in the world. So I think there is that reckoning, but you're better, know that you're better than you think you are. I think I talk a lot about tools. A lot is discussed about imposter syndrome, but for me, my tools are, I love color. I do things that make me feel confident, make me feel confident. I walk into some big rooms to interview some big people, or, manage stages. And mine is, I always like to be colorful. I like to feel vibrant.
Yeah.
It's a silly thing just to get me in the right
No, no,
mindset.
no.
But for me, it makes a difference. Going back to your point about public speaking, I've learned, no one's good at it, so practice the things you're not good at. And I've learned that, in fact, if I start with a personal story, it relaxes me, and then
Yeah,
then I can go through the formal pieces. So, don't be afraid to practice. You'll start, and you won't be that good, and then find the ways to improve. Ask for feedback. Be brave about accepting that feedback. Don't. And if you cry like me, it's okay, because you just care, and that, and take that feedback, learn, and then think, how do I adapt and get a bit better?
wonderful, wonderful. Well, look, this is the part where I normally sort of summarize, and create a few insights for the audience. But I've got two or three pages of notes here. I wonder if I could just share some of the insights and my takeaways from that. Would that be okay?
Perfect.
So I think one of the very strong early messages, particularly for women and, dare I say, for all underrepresented groups, is step into your power, recognize it, realize it, and step into your power. To find a purpose in life, and it can be a bit sort of these days, not just is start again, break this down, and start with your values. What Take some time out to actually write down what matters most to you, and how do you want that to show up, as well as recognizing your strengths. I also really like what you said there as well. It does Not everybody has a big mission in life. Yep. However, we living purposefully actually does give us an energy. It can be a quieter energy, or it can be a stronger energy, but just recognizing that can really work from that perspective. I love then what you said about women as well, and saying, when it comes to negotiation for yourself as well, find the data, and find the evidence, because when you find the data and the evidence, then you're more likely to lead with that competence. The other thing is, don't shoot yourself before you even start. Don't put yourself down before this is where the negotiation happens, not here. But actually recognizing the negotiation with yourself is important, but the right level of that. And then moving on, I think what was very important then was about the ability to ask. And again, to recognize no doesn't necessarily mean no. Yeah. No just might mean not yet, or it might mean not today or not this week. So developing a strong no muscle, and what the response is going to be there. And again, I got the sense as well from you is like, take it seriously, but don't take it personally. Don't suddenly mean, actually, my that's not a good business proposition. It's just a no from them today. I think it's a very powerful one. But also, I think then we talked then very much about the resilience, about the need to recognize that everything is a cycle. Fact. And that just everything going up doesn't happen. But actually, I got the sense as well from you and a certain number of people who've mentored you and in your close network as well, actually, that they came out the other side of that stronger. But it actually unlocked not just a stronger and better business, the ability to be a bit more vulnerable actually created greater connection with whether it was staff or whether it was partners, or it was because there was a real honesty to those approaches. So that can unlock something quite significant. But all energy, recognize this was really important. I felt recognize what your type of energy is. Recognize that where its source is, but also recognize it needs renewing. And by definition, if it doesn't renew, it doesn't fill back up again. Yep.
Mm.
So, and again, you pointed out some of the physical and the emotional elements that help you from that perspective as well. Um, I think then, coming back to that sort of final piece for you about the conversation with yourself is sort of recognizing that you're better than you think you are, and almost stepping into some of those scary rooms that um, also it's also like you can do it, but do it your way. And again, that's the big underlying message from me. This is an urgent message you've got, and you want some change now. But I'm just feeling a sensing from you that when you show up as you, whether that's colorful, and I love that anchor as well, show up as you. Color might not be it for everybody else, but show up as you to give you, I've got a jacket, a particular jacket of mine. When I put that on, I'm ready to speak. Okay. My back goes, chest comes out a little bit, couple of breaths. And again, but I think if people can find that, but again, you mentioned something that when you share a personal story, that makes the difference because it creates connection. And whoever you are a human being first. You might be a CEO or fund manager or whatever, but you're a human being first. And if you can connect with people, that's my big takeaway, I think, is you can connect with people, you've got a chance of opening pathways to relationships. And business is about relationships. And if it's about relationships, it's got to be about people.
Absolutely. I have to say, I love your summary, and I think you're completely right. I hadn't thought about it, but that personal story is about connecting with people and showing who you really are and doing it your way, doing it your way. So thank you for summarizing me in a far better, more succinct, fabulous way.
Well, thank you. And look, again, I always say this as well. It's like I've got the dead easy job. I've just got to listen and to get this up. You're the one who shares your lived experience, and I love your mission because I think it can impact so many people. And also as well, it doesn't need to isolate others already who are in the status quo. It can, do you know what, we all of us, and it's not just some fantasy, by the way, we can actually improve commercial. You and I are very commercially orientated. Yeah, we genuinely can make positive impact on this. So just final thoughts with yourself. Is there anything else you'd like to leave as a sort of final statement?
No, again, as I said, I love to steal the words of others. So I'm going to totally steal your three model, your affability, your ability, and your visibility is my message I want people to take. And I'm now going to borrow your model, which I think you heard from somebody else, but I think
Right. Okay. Well, wonderful. I'm glad, but I have to acknowledge because that's not mine. So wonderful Irishman called Michael Harty. Okay, and he took it from his father-in-law, I think. So he is the founder of the Card and Payments Awards. Yeah. So so that's Michael said. Thank you. I'll see you, Michael, tomorrow night. But he said I could use it. He did say I could use it.
thank you, Michael. Thank you for your straight up sharing. But I have to say, that is why we love what we do, because we get to hear these wonderful things and meet these wonderful people, and we learn every time. So thank you for having me. It has been an absolute joy. And thank you.
Wonderful. Look, you have a wonderful rest of the day, and amazing with your mission. And I know we'll be sharing that on LinkedIn. And thank you very much indeed for being a wonderful guest.
Thank you.